Pranam, Jai Jinendra to everybody. Let's start with the prayers. Namo Rihantanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Uvajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pava Panasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadhamam, Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Uvajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pava Panasano, Mangalancha Sabbe Simpadhamam, Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Uvajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sappa Pava Panasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadamam, Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarusura Surendra Mahito, Virambuda Sansrita, Virena Bhiyata Swakarmani Chayo, Viraya Nityam Namah. Veera Tirthamidam Prautamatulam, Veera Shighoram Tapo, Veere Sri Dhruti Kirtikanti Nichaya, Sri Veerabhadram Disa. अंगूठे अमृतवसे लपति तणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार. Carrying on with our topic of Nav Tatva, we are now on the almost the last chapters in this course that we have been doing since about April. So it's almost 7 months since we started the course on Nav Tatva. I'm hoping that we will be finishing this by next week. Today we are going to revise some of the things that we've learned in a few slides, but also introduce the subject of moksha, and then we carry on with the discussion on moksha next week, and I think we will finish this particular series next week. As I constantly reminded everybody, we are not going into great detail. We are learning some of the basic things, and I understand that some of you have found even that a bit difficult at times. I'm hoping that the lesson today may not be, we will sort of help you recollect what we learned so far, at least the general concepts of our subject matter. And in terms of the introduction to moksha, we begin to understand and grasp the importance of this particular ninth tattva. Before I share my slides, can I just ask if everybody is comfortable with the idea of Nav Tattva, Jeev, Ajeev, Punya, Pap, Ashram, Sambar, Nirjara, Asvasrama, Nirjara, Bandh, and Moksha. And if somebody can maybe briefly explain to me what is understood by Jeev and Moksha. Anybody wants to volunteer? Okay. As I've constantly reminded us that the whole purpose of studying the now nine tattvas or Nav Tattva is to
I can
understand.
try,
Yep, go on,
but
Bijal.
it
No, it is
probably
good.
won't be
It's
full. But so Jeev is the only thing that is permanent, as far as I understand. Everything else is Pudgal. And so the Jeev comes from Nigod, and when it hits the lottery, comes out and goes through the life cycles, and eventually, well, at some point will hopefully get liberated and go to moksha, which is the ultimate destination of Siddh Bhagwants at Siddhshila, where they are just in complete bliss.
okay, good. That's a great start. Anybody else wants to add anything? Thank you, Bijal.
પ્રણામ, હું ટ્રાય કરું.
હા, જયશ્રીબેન.
કે પ્રણામ. આઈ થિંક જીવ ને અજીવ જે બે તત્વ છે એમાં જીવ જે છે એને આપણે બે રીતે કહી શકાય કે એક સંસારી કે જે આપણે લોકો છે એ જીવ અને બીજા જે મોક્ષે ગયા છે સિદ્ધ થયા છે એ સિદ્ધ જીવ અને પછી બાકીનું બધું અજીવમાં એટલું ખબર છે.
Okay. If you look at this from a slightly different angle, a more practical and from the relationship from a personal relationship, where we are, what is our nature, and what is it that is actually different from our true nature in our current state. What are the defects that are obvious and apparent, and many which are not so obvious, but which then prevents us, meaning the soul, from recognizing who we truly are, and number two, experiencing our true nature. So the important aspect to understand is that Jeev is inherently knowledgeable, meaning it has the ability, or by nature, it has the ability of total knowledge, keval gnan, and it has an independent nature of happiness, bliss, joy, which is completely independent of any external stimulus or requirement for the soul to experience that. So the joy, the knowledge, the power, everything comes from within, and those are the qualities of the soul itself. And all the limitations that we see in ourselves in these lives, wherever we are, no matter how powerful, how knowledgeable, how apparently happy we appear to be, it is still very limited in terms of duration. It is also very limited in terms of the overall experience in comparison with the absolutely enormous and powerful and the experience of happiness of the soul in its completely free, liberated state. And ultimately, the purpose of dharma is to help us realize the dharma of the soul, the dharma of any particular thing or concept is its true nature. So the dharma of the soul is its true nature, and its true nature is what I've just described. And that true nature is manifest when the soul is in moksha. And if I can give you some simple examples of why that concept is sometimes very, very difficult for us to grasp. If you look at the descriptions of what moksha is, in many ways it's described in terms of absence. So do you need to eat in moksha? No. Do you experience sensual pleasures in moksha? No. Do you have any senses in moksha? No. Do you have a body in moksha? No. Do you do anything in moksha? No. And when we look at ourselves and reflect on how we lead our lives, and I'm saying this from personal experience, if I've got nothing to do, if I'm not busy, and if I've not got a piece of work or a goal or something to do, then you feel a bit lost. Then I feel, what is the next thing that I should be doing? This constant desire to be doing things is something that keeps us perpetually engrossed in activities that attract more and more karmas, and that will ultimately go on prolonging our cycle of sansar in one life after another, after another, after another. And the concept of not doing anything, the concept of just being yourself is difficult because we find it impossible or very, very difficult to actually recognize the value of not doing, the value of just being what we are, and the value of recognizing that what we are completely independent, and that in itself has the maximum amount of peace, happiness, joy, bliss, fulfillment, completeness, because and permanence. And we find that difficult, and that is why we find it difficult to even experience that for a brief moment. And the beginning of the spiritual journey starts when one recognizes the truth of the nature of the soul, but in addition begins to experience, maybe in a very basic way, the nature of that particular state of the free soul, So when the soul begins its spiritual journey, meaning it achieves a state of development called samyaktva, then the realization of what the true nature of oneself is brings about a level of peace, calmness, a level of experience that makes it very clear as to our nature. And that particular experience, that in the beginning, the achievement of samyaktva may not last very long, may be brief and be lost. But that one experience sets the soul on the path towards moksha. Because that one experience then guarantees that the soul's journey, future journey, is now time limited. Even though the time may be absolutely massive, it is still limited in comparison with infinity through which we have been traveling in this universe. And what I wanted to emphasize as we begin this is that beginning of that journey starts with the realization of our true nature and experiencing some of that. And if you talk with some of our great Guru Bhagwans and all our teachers, they will say that if you want a goal in your life, then if you can just constantly strive for the achievement of samyaktva, and if during this lifetime we manage to achieve that goal even for a brief period, then we have made a major step forward and utilized this life as a human being very, very productively. I hope that helps. Let me now share my slides and let's start with some of the revision of Nav Tatva. I'll let you read this slide. You're familiar with this. This is from the site Jain Knowledge. I thought this was quite useful pictorial summary of the 9 tattvas, the 9 fundamental concepts. As you can see, they're all listed here: Jeev, Ajeev, Punya, Pap, Ashrav, Samvar, Bandh, Nirjara, and Moksha. Again, Jeev, the soul; Ajeev, non-living matter; Punya, results of good deeds; Pap, results of bad deeds; Ashrav, influx of karmas; Samvar, stoppage of karmas; Bandh, bondage of karmas; Nirjara, eradication of karmas; and Moksha, total liberation, freedom from all karmas forever. I thought this was quite useful, slightly different analogy from what we have discussed at the beginning of this course about a traveler on a boat with a hole that requires plugging, and the concept of Nav Tattvas was explained through that. This is a slightly different way of explaining the same thing. There lived a family in a farmhouse. They were enjoying the fresh, cool breeze coming through the open doors and windows. The weather suddenly changed and a terrible dust storm set in. Realizing it was a bad storm, they got up to close the doors and the windows. By the time they could close all the doors and windows, lots of dust had entered the house. After closing the doors and the windows, they started clearing the dust that had come in to make the house clean. And this analogy is used. Jeeves are represented by the people. A jeev is represented by the house. Punya is represented by the enjoyment resulting from nice cool breeze. Pap is represented by discomfort resulting from the sandstorm which brought dust into the house. Ashrav is represented by the influx of dust through the doors and windows of the house, which is similar to the influx of karma particles to the soul. Bandh is represented by the accumulation of dust in the house, which is similar to bondage of karma particles to the soul. Samvar is represented by the closing of the doors and windows to stop the dust from coming into the house, which is similar to the stoppage of influx of karmas, particularly karma particles in the soul. Nirjara is represented by the cleaning up of accumulated dust from the house, which is similar to shedding accumulated karmic particles from the soul. And moksha is represented by the cleaned house, which is similar to the shedding of all karmic particles from the soul. So I thought this would be a useful reminder of how to remember the Nav Tattvas. For those of you who may be so inclined, Wikipedia has actually got quite a good section on moksha, and it's looking at moksha from the aspects of all the Eastern religions. So Hindu, Sanatan Dharma, uh, Buddhism, Jain Dharma, and uh, Sikhism, all very similar, and most of them are saying more or less the same thing. Vivek Chudamani is a great ancient text, and this is how it describes moksha. Beyond caste, creed, family, or lineage, that which is without name and form, beyond merit and demerit, that which is beyond space, time, and sense objects, you are that, God Himself. Meditate this within yourself. So, our true nature is God Himself. So, our Tirthankar Paramatmas have said that all life is equal, that there is no difference between the soul of an ant or a human being or a soul in moksha. Fundamentally, all the souls are the same. However, those souls who remain in sansar are experiencing the effects of the karmas that they themselves have accumulated. But ultimately, when those karmas are released or got rid of, then that soul's state in moksha is completely similar to all the other souls in moksha. Understanding that and meditating on that, so here it's a good reminder, meditate this within yourself. There are many different terms that you may hear. So moksha in Jain Dharma the way the meaning of moksha, the word moksha is described, is that ultimately it's formed of two syllables, moha and kshaya. So moksha is moha kshay. Kshay means destruction. Moh is attachment. Moh is monia karma. So moh kshay leads to moksha. Moksha is moha kshay, and that ends one's sansar. The other words that I used are mukti, nirvana, and the Wikipedia article also mentions the uh, use of the word kevali or kaivalya, keval gnan, the achievement of keval gnan before the soul leaves the body and goes to moksha and stays in that state as a kevali is what we understand of Kevali Bhagwans. So, for example, Bhagwan Mahavir achieved Keval Gnan 12 and a half years after having taken Diksha. So, at the age of about 42, and went to moksha at the age of 72. So, for about 30 years, Bhagwan Mahavir was going from place to place, setting up the foundation of the Tirth as a Tirthankar. And in that state of a Kevali, so he was a Tirthankar Kevali Bhagwant with total knowledge. In that state, he was not accumulating any lasting karmas. So the karmas that were being accumulated were very minor and brief, and they would be discarded within a very short time. So there was no risk of all that activity resulting in a further bondage within sansar, because the soul had achieved that particular state whereby it could not, it would not go back into sansar in any form at all. And ultimately, at the end of that lifespan, the soul would definitely go to moksha. So that is all the nature of all the Kevali Bhagwans who may be around at the moment as well in say Mahavide Kshetra. At the end of their life, they will all go to moksha. And their duration of their state of Kevali Bhagwant could be millions of years, depending on their lifespan. So Nirvana, Moksha, Mukti, all synonymous words. I thought this would be quite useful as well. So this was again something from Wikipedia. The Katha Upanishad, or the Middle Upanishadic era script dated to the second half of the first millennium BCE, is among the earliest expositions about sansar and moksha. In Book 1, Section 3, the legend of boy Nachiket queries Yam, the lord of death, to explain what causes sansar and what leads to liberation. Nachiket inquires what causes sorrow. Yam explains that suffering and sansar results from life that is lived absent-mindedly, with impurity, with neither the use of intelligence nor self-examination. And the most important words here to me is self-examination, reflection of who we are, where we are, what, how are we different from our true self, and how do we change that, meaning remove all that is not part of us, So self-examination where neither mind nor senses are guided by one's soul, self. So and it's important to remember this, the explanation starts, suffering and sansar results from a life that is lived absent-mindedly. So one where neither mind nor senses are guided by one's soul or self, liberation comes from a life lived with inner purity, alert mind, led by buddhi, meaning reason, intelligence, realization of the supreme self, Purush or supreme self or Bhagwant or supreme self as Siddh Arihant, who dwells in all beings. So our true nature of the soul in its Siddh state. Kathak Upanishad asserts knowledge liberates, knowledge is freedom. Kathak Upanishad also explains the role of yoga in personal liberation, moksha. Also, by the way, the meaning of the word yoga also leads to that which joins the soul to moksha is called yoga or yoga. Again from Wikipedia, moksha and nirvana are one and the same. Jain texts sometimes use the term Kevalya and call the liberated soul as Kevali. As with all Indian religions, moksha is the ultimate spiritual goal in Jainism. It defines moksha as the spiritual release of all karma. Jain Tattva Sutra describes the path of moksha as Samyak Darshan Gnan Charitrani Moksha Marga. Samyak Darshan, correct view, meaning faith, acceptance of the truth of the soul. Samyak Gnan, correct knowledge, meaning undoubting knowledge of the tattvas. Samyak Charitra, correct conduct, meaning behavior consistent with the 5 vows. Jain texts often add Samyak Tap or correct asceticism as a 4th jewel, emphasizing belief in ascetic practices as the means to liberation, moksha. The 4 jewels are called Moksha Marg, meaning Marg is the path or the road. According to Jain text, the liberated pure soul, Siddh, goes up to the summit of the universe and dwells there in eternal bliss. Now, I'm just going to stop sharing the slides and we can go back to any of the slides if you have any question. I'm going to open up some discussion. What we will do next week is go into the depth of how the Nav Tatva Prakarana describes moksha. There are certain aspects that we'll talk about. We won't go into great detail, but we will look at the different aspects of learning that are included in the Nav Tatva Prakarana. But as an introduction, as a preamble, I thought this set of slides would be quite useful to lay the groundwork for a more in-depth discussion. So again, as I've always said, we are actually even in that what we call in-depth is still very superficial. So we are not getting in too deep, but we are taking a few steps further in that direction to understand this and hopefully to remember that for the future. Okay, I'm going to stop for a few minutes now. From what we've shared or learned so far today, are there any questions? Does that mean you understood everything or the opposite? Has this been difficult? Sandeep?
Um, from the slides today, you
A bit
mentioned,
more loudly, Sandeep. It's your voice is a bit.
sorry, can you hear now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah. From the slides today, you mentioned that Kevli is the same as Sid, or is the same as uh, being, i-
So
uh, is basic. I found that being when you say Kevli,
mm-hmm,
there's the knowledge that they have, the
mm-hmm,
full knowledge,
mm-hmm.
but they still have some um, uh, karma, minor, but
Yes, yes.
which is shared.
So the soul achieves Keval Gnan when the four Ghati karmas are destroyed forever.
Yes,
What remains is Nam karma, Gotra karma, Vedaniya karma, and Aisha karma. Those four are the Aghati karmas. Okay.
yes,
So the person remains with the body until the Aisha karma comes to an end, and that soul then leaves that body to go to moksha. Until
yes,
then, the soul has got rid of Monia karma and along with it Gnana Varniya karma, Dasna Varniya karma, etc.
yes,
And in that process, it has achieved Keval Gnan, and that is why that soul is called Kevali, or we call them Kevali Bhagwant.
yes. But from the slide you
Mm-hmm,
showed today,
mm-hmm.
it says that Kev, um, being uh, basically it's the same as like being Sid, uh, which is slightly different, isn't it? It's the knowledge is the same, but there's still with the Sid you don't have any karmas, but with Kevlis you still have minor karmas left.
So the slide basically that was extracted from the Wikipedia says this. I'll read it out. I want we can share it if it's required. Nav Tatva Moksha, that is the slide number 9. In Jainism, moksha and nirvana are one and the same. That is what it is saying. Jain
Yeah.
texts sometimes use the term kevalya and call the liberated soul as kevali, as with all Indian religions. So you're right. What is it saying is the liberated soul, and here the term liberation is used probably in the sense of the soul being liberated from Ghati karma, from Monia karma. Therefore, in that sense, it has achieved that level of liberation from which it will not go back to any kind of bondage.
Yes, but it's
But it
different
still
from Sid.
has some, so it's not completely liberated.
Yes,
So that soul is called Kevali or Kevalya, and called the liberated soul is Kevali. So here the soul in moksha or in the Siddh Bhagwans are Kevali as well, but they are Siddh, meaning that they do not have any karmas. But a Kevali Bhagwant has still got the body, has still got the Aisha karma, and on all the Agati karmas, the four Agati karmas. So
yes,
they are still within the body, but for
yes,
all intents and purpose, their further cycle of life and death has come to an end.
yes, but it's just the minor karmas which still remain.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just basically that's the difference.
That's the difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So it's not exactly the same, but it's nearly the same.
Yeah, but I think here in this article, uh, my feeling is that whoever has written this understands that, but is trying to explain the term Kevalya or Kevali And in some texts, meaning English translations, that distinction may not have been very clear. So somebody may, like you said, get the idea that a soul in moksha, so somebody who is still in a body but has achieved keval gnan, can be called to have achieved moksha, but technically it's not completely true that that soul is still within a body, but at the end of that life will go to Siddhshila and be finally permanently in moksha. But that soul within that body is not going back anywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, like, even Mahavir Bhagwan had upsarg when he
Yeah.
was Kavli.
So
So,
he did suffer from some pain, which is also unusual for Tirthankar Paramatma after
yes.
achieving Keval Gnan to suffer any kind of upsarg. So good you reminded us. That is the reference to what he suffers as a result of the Tejolesha that Goshalak had thrown at him.
Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, so I just saw that difference. So, because from the text, I thought it says it's the same, but this is a slight difference.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. But I think whoever has written that is probably become stating this with some brevity. My feeling is that what you are describing is understood,
Yeah.
but for economy in words, uh, limiting the number of words, the full detail is probably trying to use less words, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
thanks. Thanks for raising that. Anybody else?
પ્રણામ હું તક્ષા બોલું છું.
Ah,
આપણે તમે કીધું કે સમ્યક્ત્વ or so that is experiencing the soul even for a brief moment.
mhm.
Is that correct, my understanding?
Samyaktva is also described as the faith in the right Dev, Guru, and Dharma. But from an absolute point of view, the state of the soul and the experience of one's true nature. So when one realizes the nature of the soul and its relationship to the world and the universe and the um, association with karma, and one gains that knowledge, but one may have the knowledge and have faith in that knowledge, but may not have necessarily got to the level of getting rid of rag and dvesh to an extent that that brief experience of the soul is actually manifest. So, for example, the process of achieving samyaktva is said to be the process of what is called granthi bhed. Granthi bhed means granthi is a knot. It's a Gordian knot, and I think we've discussed this in one of the classes at the beginning. The knot of attachment and hatred, rag and dvesh, when that magnitude of those karmas reduce to a massive extent, then the soul begins to recognize, because it's only after the burden of that rag and dvesh is lessened to a significant effect and the soul actually then makes an effort to push through that knot, then it begins to realize its true nature. And the process of achieving Samyaktva is called Granthi Bhed. And when that happens, the soul's future progress is guaranteed. So that is ultimately Samyaktva Prapti is at the point when one has got to the stage of Granthi Bhed.
ઓકે તો આપણા આચાર્ય ભગવંતને જે હોય એ લોકો ઈ સ્ટેટ એ લોકો ઈ સ્ટેજ ઉપર તો પહોંચી ગયા હશે ને આમ તો એવા હશે ને.
Yeah, and even Shravaks may have achieved that stage, but it's difficult for individuals or even Gnanis, unless they've got some superior knowledge, to be aware of the state of the soul within. So a Shravak, so for example, in terms of spiritual development, from the point of mithyatva, meaning the wrong belief and wrong faith, to samyaktva, say from the third stage, the gunstan, to the fourth stage. At that stage, you may have achieved, or one may have achieved that state, but has not put anything into practice yet, meaning that avirat samyak drasti, meaning they have not actually put anything into practice. So virti koi jatni nathi lidhi. Then the next stage is deshvirti.
Okay.
And then the next stage is sarvavirti. And there are the various stages.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm talking about the third stage, the samyaktva. Bharatbhai, it's mithyatva, saswadan, and
Mishra.
mishra. And then the fourth is samyaktva.
Okay. Yeah.
Barabar,
Thank you.
Bharatbhai?
Yeah.
Yeah, mithyatva,
First is Mithyatva, then
aswadan,
Sasada, then
mishra.
Mishra. That Mishra is Samyaktva and Mithyatva. I mean, neither Samyaktva nor Mithyatva.
Yeah, so it's actually a state of
It's like
flu-
sitting on the fence.
sitting on the fence. So I don't know whether the
Yeah.
soul exists or not, and I'm not sure that it doesn't exist either. So that kind of state or belief, that's Mishra Gunstan, and then Samyaktva Gunstan, Avirat Samyak Drasti, and then the soul gradually progresses. So when our Sadhu Bhagwans, at the point of taking Diksha, they've crossed into the path of practicing, putting into action all their understanding and their inner achievement. And then there is, I mean, I'm not sure exactly until what level in our land at this stage, at what stage our Guru Bhagwans may not, and that may vary. So you can be a Sadhu Bhagwant and not actually be at the stage of Samyak Drasti as well. So it's something that would be known to a Gnani, Keval Gnani Bhagwant, but not necessarily the state of the soul cannot be ascertained and said with guarantees that this is where you are. One can, based on one's observations of the behavior, may say that this person is either at the fourth, fifth, sixth Gunstan. And that is something that, I mean, a lot of our Guru Bhagwans are probably well in advance at, say, fifth, sixth stages. Many of them, I'm sure, are at that stage currently.
So would you
Yeah.
call that self-realized soul at some point?
Yes, I mean, in terms of that level of achievement. But you see, when that is self-proclaimed, it becomes very difficult to be sure, because ultimately the Gunstan is a measure of the state of the soul. And the state of the soul is generally only known to somebody with, say, Keval Gnan individually. So where is this particular soul at? Where is that particular soul at? What is the nature of this soul's future? And those are things that are knowable by somebody with that level of knowledge. But even Guru Bhagwans may not necessarily be absolutely certain, but some may be. So I don't know. But if you look at some of our Guru Bhagwans, Acharya Bhagwans, Upadhyay Bhagwans, even Sadhu Bhagwans, Sadhviji Bhagwans, who are currently alive, a lot of them may actually be at a fairly high level.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. Sandip?
Yeah, just to clarify what you just mentioned about this knowledge. I mean, it could be that the current state would be different from what they achieved. I mean, they could have achieved the Samyak when they were, say, for example, in Devlok, the previous life. You know, they could have achieved that.
Yeah.
So you can never know it.
You can never know. Yeah, you're
He
right.
can come down from there,
Yeah.
you know, from their level. So the current state, you can never know. I mean, only the Sid Bhagwan or, the
Keval Gnani.
Tirthankar or Kevli Bhagwan would know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think.
So it is also possible that some of us may have already passed through that stage and achieved Samyak at some life in the past and have lost it subsequently. But chances are that we may not have. So the important thing is to make the effort in this life and see how far we can go. Okay.
પ્રણામ. એક મને પૂછ્યું હતું તો
હા.
પછી આનો અર્થ એવી રીતે થયો કે સમ્યક્ત્વ એટલે કે આપણે દેવગુરુ ધર્મમાં શ્રદ્ધા થવી, બરાબર? તો
બરાબર.
સમ્યક્ત ઇક્વલ ગ્રંથિવેદ
એ
ઇક્વલ
લેવલ
ચોથું
ઉપર
ગુણસ્થાનક
સોરી
ઇક્વલ ચોથું ગુણસ્થાનક એ બધું સેમ વર્ડ્સ થયા?
સેમ વર્ડ્સ ન થયા, પણ they are describing different
સ્ટેટ.
state in the sense કે from looking at the same thing from a different aspect. એટલે સમ્યક્ત્વની પ્રાપ્તિ થઈ અને સમ્યક્ત્વની પ્રાપ્તિ થયા પછી એ અમલમાં કેટલું મૂકે છે અને સાચા દેવગુરુ ધર્મ પર શ્રદ્ધા થઈ એ એક વસ્તુ, પણ સાથે આત્માની અનુભૂતિ થઈ કે નહીં.
ઓકે.
એટલે શ્રદ્ધા ખરી, પણ શ્રદ્ધા સાથે જો કશાયો પણ એટલા જોરદાર પડ્યા હોય તો એ આત્માની અનુભૂતિ ટકે નહીં. અનુભૂતિ આવે પણ નહીં. અને અમુક જે આપણે કર્મના સિદ્ધાંતો ને કર્મના જે કાયદાઓ છે એનું આપણે સમજ કરીએ તો સમ્યક્ત્વની પ્રાપ્તિ થઈ હોય તો એમાં જે અનંત આનુબંધી કશાય હોય એ દરમિયાન એ કશાયો ન હોય. એટલે સમ્યક્ત્વની હાજરીની અંદર એ કશાયોનો ઉદય ન હોય, એટલે એમાં કોઈ પણ પાપ તીવ્ર ભાવે એ આત્મા બાંધે નહીં. એટલે એ જે અંદરનું જે લેવલ છે એ લેવલ, હવે અત્યારે આપણે બધા અહીંયા બેઠા છીએ, આપણા કેવા અને કેટલા કશાયોનો ઉદય છે એ આપણે ખબર ન પડે કે ખબર નથી. આપણે માનતા હોઈએ અને અમુક કષાયો છે એ બહુ સહેલા છે જાણવા.
હા.
ક્રોધ આવતો હોય તો એ તરત જ સમજાઈ જાય.
હમ.
પણ લોભ જોરદાર પડ્યો છે
હમ.
એ સમજવું અઘરું છે.
Okay. હા.
અભિમાન જોરદાર પડ્યું છે એ ઘણીવાર સમજવું અઘરું છે.
હમ.
કોઈ બહારથી એકદમ નમ્ર પણ દેખાતો હોય
હા.
એમાં પણ અભિમાન ઘણું બધું પડ્યું હોય. અને
હમ.
એ કયા લેવલ ઉપર પડ્યું છે,
હમ.
અનંતાનુબંધી લેવલ ઉપર પડ્યું હોય તો
હમ.
ત્યાં એ આત્માની અનુભૂતિ સમ્યક્ત્વની હયાતી જ ન હોય ત્યાં.
હમ. હમ. Okay.
એટલે આમાં અમુક આપણે જેમ વધારે ઊંડા ઉતરતા જાય
હમ.
તો એમ હમણાં એક વ્યાખ્યાનમાં પરમ પૂજ્ય ભક્તિ યોગાચાર્ય આચાર્ય યશુ વિજયજી સમજાવે છે કે જીવનનો ગોલ સમ્યક્ત્વની પ્રાપ્તિ એની અંદર કે ક્યાંક આપણે આગળ વધ્યા છે તો એનું પ્રમાણ શું, એટલે કે એનું પ્રૂફ શું કે આપણે
હમ.
ક્યાંક આગળ વધ્યા છીએ.
હમ.
તો જો જીવનમાં આનંદ અને શાંતિ હોય
હમ.
અને દેખાતું હોય કે કશાયો મંદ થયા છે
હા.
તો આપણે માનીએ આપણે ક્યાંક આગળ વધ્યા છે. પણ એ ખાસ બહુ સરસ સલાહ આપે છે કે તમને લાગતું હોય કે તમે અહીંયા પહોંચ્યા છો,
હા.
પણ તમારે એ તમારા ગુરુ પાસે જઈ અને એની ચોકસાઈ કરવી જોઈએ કે ભાઈ સાહેબ, મને લાગે છે કે હું અહીંયા પહોંચ્યો છું,
હમ.
તમે જોઈને બતાવો હું ક્યાં પહોંચ્યો છું.
હમ. Okay.
એટલે આ લેવલ ઉપર જે સાધનાનું જે માર્ગ છે
હમ.
એમાં તો કોન્સ્ટન્ટલી એ વ્યક્તિ, એ આત્મા આમાં જ ગૂંથાયેલો હોય.
હમ.
અને અંદર એનું જે બહારથી ભલે કાંઈ ન દેખાતું હોય પણ અંદરથી એનું જે જગત હોય એમાં આ કોન્સ્ટન્ટ લેવલની જે ઉદાસીનતા કે વૈરાગ્ય કે
હમ. હમ.
એ કોન્સ્ટન્ટ હયાત હોય.
હમ. સરસ. ઘણી વાર
નેક્સ્ટ
આપણને એમ થાય કે આપણા કશાયો તો સાવ મન થઈ ગયા છે, પણ ધ મોમેન્ટ ઈ સામે આવે એટલે પાછું બધું ઉભરો થાય. એટલે અપ્સ એન્ડ ડાઉન્સ બહુ આવે એમ.
હા, પણ એ જ્યાં ખલાસ થઈ ગયા છે એ જ્યાં સુધી આપણે બરાબર ઊંડાણથી તપાસ ન કરીએ ત્યાં સુધી ખબર ન પડે.
હા.
Sorry, Nick, I
થેન્ક યુ.
saw your message. In moksha, did we say that the soul has no senses? The senses are, yes, you're right. The soul has no senses because the senses are a manifestation of the body. Senses are not, the soul is completely independent. It has in moksha, the soul is independent. There is no body there. It is in its free state. So it's a very good question, Nick. How can one say one experience infinite happiness in moksha? And this is where our fallacy is, that our experience of happiness is limited to what we feel through the senses, and our understanding is that without the senses there is no experience of happiness. But if we look a bit deeper into that, no sensory experience, good or bad, is permanent. And the one's acceptance of a sensory experience varies from time to time. So if I'm sitting down to eat a meal and in my plate I've got something sweet, so I've got a bundino ladu, I taste it, but if say, well, this is the ultimate sweetness of everything, and somebody says, okay, since you like bundino laddu so much, I'm going to give you 20 bundina laddus, but I'm not going to give you anything else because I don't want to dilute your experience of this sweetness with anything else, how long would our senses actually last that? So your question is, would it be fair to say mind in itself is a sense? Yes, the mind itself is something that directs the senses, it generates the desires, but the mind itself, according to Jain Dharma, is a manifestation of Pudgal, Mano Vargana. So it is a matter similar to the senses. The senses sense the different matters. So the vision of something out there is that that matter is accepted and then assessed by the senses, and the picture is then evaluated by the mind. Similarly, what one hears is then evaluated, but the words themselves, the matter that gets transmitted from the atmosphere to the ears, and the ear then processes them, all that is Pudgal. And what the mind thinks is also Pudgal. The mind is actually, in fact, called the sixth sense as well. What we call sense is controlled by the mind. In a way, because our reaction, and one can, so for example, we are taught to be observers only. So we are said that it is said that really the state of the soul for it to improve is when the soul becomes gnata and drashta, meaning you see and you know, not karta and bhokta, meaning that I'm experiencing what I'm seeing and I'm getting engrossed in it. So that engrossment and the sense of being part of that experience rather than being detached from that experience is where the difference between an enlightened soul and a not enlightened soul is. So the enlightened souls would be gnata, drashta, meaning that whatever is happening is something that is outside of me. That is not my true self. It is all temporary. It is a manifestation of Pudgal that is short-lived. By very nature, that is temporary. And it is completely different from myself, who I am. I am life. I am alive. I am Jeev. That is matter that has no life. Pudgal by itself has no experience of its own. The experience and the evaluation of that experience is the quality of the soul. And the mind is an instrument of that. But the moment the soul begins to be dictated by the mind, that is where the problem arises. And all spiritual practices are meant to take us to that level of being a man, meaning mindless. Meaning, the less you get engrossed with your mind and the closer you are to yourself, the soul, the more happier you are. So, in terms of your original question, what is the experience of happiness? And if you look back at every sensual experience that you have had, it is short-lived, but what the soul, and in our ignorance, what we are trying to do is we are trying to experience our true nature of bliss and happiness But we have wrongly ascribed that that happiness to an experience through the senses. Whereas, and whatever brief joy that comes through, it is a function of a karma called Sata Vedaniya karma. I'm feeling happiness or I'm feeling bliss. Bhogavali karma. So I'm experiencing some satisfaction. But ultimately, that is still a manifestation of something that is not of the soul. It is outside the soul. But when the soul is completely free from all this, then its true nature of happiness emerges through. And if you look at and go back to the time when you may have felt the happiest, and you try and define why was I happy then? And if you analyze that deeply enough, you will realize that you were happy because you were independent. That happy level of happiness did not depend on anything. You were happy in spite of what was going on. So one can be happy in the presence of severe pain. Hope that's helped and not confused you more, Mick. Okay, any? Thanks. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Just one simple, I think, reminder to end today's class. There are descriptions or there are ways in which one begins to understand and evaluate where one is. And there are descriptions of the state of the soul as it progresses. So before we achieve the state of samyaktva, there are stages that lead towards that. And in terms of preparing the groundwork for getting to that stage, there are different stages, and those are described in what is called uh, the 8 drastis of yoga, yogini ath drasti, and those are sort of progressive stages. The first few stages called Kanta, Mitra, Tara, those stages are similarly described in Patanjali Yoga. And there are texts which actually compare what Patanjali Yoga Sutra did and what this 8 drastis of of yoga are described in Jainism or Jain Dharma. And in those stages, the nature of the soul's progress and the uh, what helps one reach those stages, what are the steps that one needs to take, and what are the achievements at the end of those stages are described. But some simple things that when a soul has achieved a level of development that is considered to be progress, then some of the things that souls do not do is say what is described as tivra bhave pap na kare, meaning they may be engaged in sinful activities, but tivra bhave, meaning not with a passion. With a level of, they may engage with a level of detachment, but a level of understanding as well that I'm doing this, it's my weakness. But this is not right. And my true nature is different. And when souls begin to recognize the truth in their true nature and what the path towards achieving that is, then the real progress starts. So in terms of, say, for example, we were talking about somebody who is, say, at a level of desvirtis, meaning somebody who is taken limited vows or a Jain householder. So one definition of a Shravak or a Jain householder who has reached that stage, one way it's described is that that person is sukhma sukhi na hui and dukhma dukhi na hui. Meaning that in terms of material comforts, they are not engrossed in that. So sukhma sukhi na hui. And dukhma dukhi na hui, meaning that even if in the state of poverty, in the state of physical ill health, and in all kinds of things, that person is still detached from that, recognizing that this is happening to my body, not to me. The other way of looking at a Shravak is somebody who is staying within sansar because even though he wants to become a monk and leave everything behind, he is not actually at that state. Sansar ma e na mane, ka mane e reche. Those are some of the basic fundamental qualities of a level of spiritual progress that are described. So if you go deeper into the different books of Jain Dharma, there is a lot of depth in the progress that we are talking about. So I'll end there. Is that okay? We'll start next week with a more in-depth understanding of moksha and what the Nav Tatva Prakarana is describing. Okay. Okay, everybody. Thank you for your comment, Nick. Bharat Bhai, any last words of if there's anything that I have missed out or have said that may be not accurate?
No, I don't think. I mean, we've covered it basically.
Ajitbhai, I have one question. I'm Hina. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry, Jai Jinendra.
Jai
I
Jinendra.
just wanted to ask, when does the soul not initially have to have the right punya karma to be able to develop the qualities and reach these certain stages? If you can be doing so much and you understand, but what is it then sometimes that holds you back? That is it's some karma that holds you back. Karma and Budgal, are they their matter? Is that correct?
That's correct. Pudgal is matter and karma is a Pudgal.
So they are on your your actions bring karma. Whether good karma, good actions bring you the good punya, and bad actions will bring the pap karma. So, sometimes there was a slide you showed where you said, like, you don't waste this life. Who are you? you know, who am I? And you want to progress. So does that not depend on the soul, on the karma that that soul is carrying?
Yes. So there are a few sort of different threads to your question, Hina. The punya and pap will bring you circumstances that are conducive or not conducive to a level of material happiness or otherwise. Punya and pap may give you circumstances that may aid your spiritual progress. So, for example, as a result of some great punya, we have all achieved the life as a human being. So we've been born as a human being, and that in itself is a manifestation of having acquired a lot of good karmas, because the life of a human being is not easy. In universal terms, it is it's a very, very rare. So that is in many ways a great achievement. Not only that, we have been born in a family with some moral and religious background and have had exposure to that. You had the opportunity to actually listen and explore some of the teachings of our Tirthankar Bhagwans. Now, a lot of us have got experience and that background and that interest and have had that sort of facilities, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all of us engage and use those facilities. If we look
Correct.
at all the people who actually come to these classes or to the events and have an interest in actually furthering their spiritual progress and develop an interest and are willing to listen, that again is very rare. So punya brings you circumstances. How you then use them to develop spiritually and examine yourself. Where am I spiritually? How good am I? How far am I from my true self? What are the things that are holding me back? And some simple things are like, so when you contemplate in a derasar in front of our Tirthankar Bhagwan and say, Bhagwan is vitrag, does not have rag or dvesh. What does vitragata mean? How far am I from vitragata? Because ultimately that is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Because when you are spiritual, in terms of spiritual progress, the biggest enemy is monia karma, and that mithyatva, meaning wrong belief, is part of that. Mithyatva monia karma, meaning your worldview, your knowledge of yourself becomes warped, it's limited. Your understanding that you are the body and nothing else, and our great interest in everything that surrounds us, my wealth, my health, my body, my family, my ambitions, my job, my degrees. We consider all those as mine, and our sense of possession of all those things is what prevents us from realizing that none of that is actually ours, that we are separate from it. These are temporary constructs for this particular life. The moment we die, all that's gone, and in another life, there'll be a whole new set of constructs there.
You're right.
And
Yeah.
and holding on to that knowledge and living by it, then if you live by it, then you say, okay, I've had a disaster today. I've been to the doctor and he has told me that I've got cancer. Fine. What will happen will happen. I've got cancer because I've acquired some pap karma in a previous life, and that has come to fruition now. And I'm likely to suffer. But God give me strength that my body suffers, but in my mind I remain detached from that. That is great spiritual progress if you can detach yourself from that pain. I won a lottery today and I'm going to be a millionaire. Okay? That doesn't actually make any difference to me. Chances are that if I get engrossed in it, that million are going to ruin me. Again, so equanimity in happiness and in unhappiness, material happiness and material unhappiness. That is spiritual progress, and that comes from within. That is where the effort counts. Most of the things that we get in life are a result of previous punya karma and pap karma. But the real spiritual effort that one needs to make is from within. Who am I? How am I compared to my pure self? What is the difference between Vitrag Bhagwan or Guru Bhagwans and myself? Where are my faults? How can I get rid of them? That is where spiritual progress starts.
No,
Hope that helps.
thank you. No, definitely. It was you pinpointed it correctly. It's being in equanimity. In that is the I think the crunch. It's
That's
not
correct.
having that emotion too high or too low in times of good and bad, but to remain in that sense and state of equilibrium,
Yep.
basically.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No,
Good.
thank you. Thank you.
If I've said anything that is against the teachings of our Tirthankar Paramatmas and our Guru Bhagwans, I ask for forgiveness. जिनाग्न विरुद्ध कहीं पण बोलियो हो ते सभी हूँ मनोचन काय करे तस्मिच्छामि दुक्कडम सर्वमंगल मांगल्यम सर्वकल्याण कारणम प्रदानम सर्वधर्माणाम जयम जयति शासनम. See you all next week. I'm sorry, Kavit and our Zoom team, that we've gone on an extra half an hour. Thank you all very much for staying. Hello.